All right. How long's the video? 7. Oh. We got time. I assume with the video, I'm not going to link to it. Don't ask me, I'll snap. Yeah, I think so.
It's kind of hard for me to explain to people what I do because I do so many things. So I'm a writer, director, and a photographer. So my work is very visual. Give This Heart a Pen came from a brainstorming session I had with my teammate. He said we should do some original content, and he said Sophia would be great to work with, and I've been friends with Sophia for years. We're both poets. And I thought about her book called Somebody Give This Heart a Pen, and this image of a heart made out of notes just came to my mind. When looking at cameras for shoots, I'm looking for something that's easy to operate, first of all. Light, the weight is a very important factor, and I need it to be fast. I need it to be easy to maneuver. It just needs to be straightforward. When I first saw and held the EOS C70, I felt like it was a small but mighty camera, quite reliable and durable. I noticed the buttons as well on the sides, and I thought, great, they're not spread out too far all over the camera. I could put my hand around the grip and reach some. The media button being on top, loved that. I like a camera that allows me to get into awkward positions, especially ones that allow me to get into my fly on the wall type of vibe. And the fact that the screen could come out and allow me to shoot from behind a ladder, a lot of cameras don't really offer that versatility, and the EOS C70 is definitely versatile in that regard. Color is very important to me, especially for this project. And I needed to make sure people got the full essence of all the palettes that we were going to work with, from Sophia's skin tone to locations, the fabrics especially. I've been a huge fan of Canon's color science from day one. So when I saw the C-Log 3, I was really impressed, but also seeing what the Rec 709 LUT on top, I said, yeah, perfect. I didn't have to think about doing too much in post. And knowing that the color was true, the highlights were kept clean, I think Canon cameras like natural light as much as I do. Yeah, this is the shot. So part of the film was to make sure we show not just the dreamy landscapes, but also the greatness of London and stuff. So nighttime was a chance to bring a different mood to the table, but also for me to see what this camera could do at the same time. But for once, the camera did most of the work. I could be in the middle of a street without any direct light source, and I can see everything. It's amazing. This is my first time using an RF lens, and a whole set of them at that, to be honest. It was a really interesting experience. They were very just sharp. There was a difference for sure. The image stabilization was unlike anything else. It's smooth, it's subtle, and when I'm watching back the footage as well, you know, I'm sure people are gonna watch what we made and be like, did you use a gimbal for the whole thing? No. This is majority handheld, and that's going to be interesting to a lot of people. Using the RF lenses was a really great experience for me, but even better was knowing that thanks to the 0.71 times adapter, I could bring in my old kit, my old lenses, and still allow it to have a presence on the set and a use. It doesn't really stop me from going forward with what I've got, but also moving forward with what's coming out. It's actually allowing us to have more fun and say there is no lens we can't use. The film needed to be very mobile. I don't see poetry as a stationary medium, so everything was gonna require movement. So I thought, what is a medium that best suits that? Parkour. I said, yeah, cool. And Georgia came to mind because I'm really big on female representation in parkour. My first reaction to the 120 FPS was how clean it was. I was impressed. Look at that.
Oh my goodness.
I could do it seamlessly, flipping through the camera settings on the touchscreen from 30 to 120 FPS, easy. The gimbal side of things was interesting because I wanted to see how this would fit. And I believe when I was running with the parkour element, I was straight in there. The flip screen allowed me to really run with it at an awkward angle, so I could see where I was going and see the shots. I could tell that it was in focus. It felt like a camera that was made to just go. The ND filters and the sound recording abilities were two of my favorite things on this camera for sure. I love the fact that I haven't got to screw on an ND onto the top of a lens. It saves me time and effort. So being able to click through the various stops of ND, beautiful. Now to do the sound, the fact that I'm getting mini XLR inputs, brilliant. It means that I don't have to worry about an external recorder. Everything can go straight into the camera and there's no worries about if it was recorded or not. So the AF face tracking feature on the EOS C70, it just kept Sophia in focus all the time. So I was a huge fan of that. It allows you as a solo shooter or a director to focus on what's going on in the shot. The performances, the subjects, without having to worry about focus shifting. You know, it took a lot of work off my hands. Another thing I really found interesting was the touchscreen autofocus. I had fun with it, if anything. I had more fun with that feature than I thought I would, because I could have a shot that I thought was gonna have everything in focus, and then I said, actually no, I wanna, right between a bollard and her in the street, it was just really fun to use. But when I did go into manual focus, it felt a lot easier than my past experiences. You could tell if it was in focus or not with the box. So if it was green, it's in focus. If it's not, it goes white. So it works with me, still taking the load off my hands. The first people I would recommend this camera to are solo shooters, shooting directors for sure. People that work in documentary, people that work in short film, and people that work in music videos. This camera's for you. If you're a small crew person, this camera's for you. If you want to do it all yourself, this camera is most definitely for you. I think it's a camera that will allow you to think beyond limitations of most cine cameras. And that is a bonus, because you don't want to be limited by the medium you're trying to tell a story through.
Hello and welcome to the second of a bunch of very special live Q&A sessions with a hand-picked selection of cinematographers and experts who will be talking in depth about their experiences in the industry and of course the exciting new launches that happened today, all of which is part of Canon Vision. Now, as you're all aware by now, this virtual trade show has been created in place of this year's IBC. And even though it would have been so good to do this in person with actual people, it's really nice to be back doing another virtual showcase after Canon launched the impressively spec'd EOS R5 and R6 on the 9th of July, which feels like an eternity ago now because time has just been going so quickly. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Lucy Hedges. I'm the technology editor for the Metro newspaper in the UK. I'm also a presenter for the BBC Travel Show, and I am absolutely honoured and really chuffed to be back playing host for you guys again today. Now, as you all know, there's been a lot of exciting announcements today as Canon pulled back the curtain on a range of inspiring new products for cinematographers, independent filmmakers, and of course the broadcasting industry. So let's just do a quick recap of what's been launched. So first of all, we've got the EOS C70, which also happens to be the first Cinema EOS camera to incorporate the RF mount, and it's the most compact and lightweight Cinema EOS camera to date. It's loaded with the potential to become one of the best cinema cameras on the scene, thanks to features like high frame rate 4K shooting at 120 FPS with audio recording, improved dual pixel autofocus with intelligent tracking. We've got a touch interface and a distinctive compact design. So essentially, Canon's vision involves taking super 35mm movie making in an exciting direction with a camera that wants to transform the way films and video are made and to ultimately transform the way that videographers work in order to meet the diverse and evolving recording requirements of the industry. And then there is, of course, the newly announced mount adapter EF-EOS R 0.71 times, giving users access to the extensive range of Canon EF mount lenses while paving the way to expand creative capabilities for even more shooting freedom. And finally, demonstrating Canon's commitment to lens innovation and strengthening its 4K broadcast lens lineup, there's the CJ20 EX5B. It's a high-performance broadcast lens that's been engineered to resolve an outstanding level of detail across an equally outstanding zoom range. So I guess you guys are wondering what you can expect from these Q&A sessions over the next couple of days. So let me tell you. So Canon's essentially invited a selection of guest speakers and a brilliant bunch of inspirational and all knowledgeable guests from different corners of the planet to talk about their experiences in the industry, their projects and the shoots they've been involved in, and of course the Canon kit they used to do it. So this is a really, really fun opportunity for you guys, the audience, to be inspired by fellow filmmakers and other people who love nothing more than to be armed with a camera as their professional weapon of choice. We've got a lot to talk about, so much to talk about. We're really diving into a variety of interesting topics over the next couple of days during these live Q&A sessions. It's also worth mentioning that the sessions will be available to rewatch later on the Canon Vision platform in case you missed one, or maybe you just want to rewatch it again and again because you really like it. And make sure you keep an eye out on the Canon Pro social media channels to take a look at more content shot with the newly launched products, and of course loads of other cool content as well. Just head over to @CanonEMEA Pro on Facebook and Twitter. You know the drill. We all know how to use social media. So before we get going, I just want to give you a bit of an overview of what this session is all about, just to whet your appetite just a little bit. So I am joined by director, writer, and photographer Jolade Olusanya, who just happened to be involved in the very first production that used the EOS C70. Now, also joining us on this session is Canon product specialist Aaron Wandawa from Canon, who can talk to us a bit more about the new kit's technical side and what this means for filmmakers. Now, before we kick off, I know you're eager to kick off, it goes without saying that we would absolutely love to hear your questions. So if you've got any burning questions you'd like to ask our special guests and DOPs throughout the session, we'd love to hear them, and these guys would love to answer them, so don't be shy. So on that note, I would like to say hello to Jolade. Hey.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on this live stream today. So let's start by, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So yeah, I'm a director, writer, and photographer. I've been working in film for almost 10 years now. I used to work in TV, but mostly do film now, documentaries, and a lot of creative videos. I like telling stories,
Yeah.
And that's me in a nutshell. I work with a few different creative teams, 6 weeks, a creative collective, and also Ronin Co, a production company that I've set up to tell stories as well. So
yeah, I like that. You're a storyteller. And tell me about some of the work that you've done. What's that included to date?
Oh gosh, where do I even start? So I travel quite a bit with my work. So I've been lucky enough to do a few documentaries across the world. I've done a few commissions for TV stations. As a filmmaker, but also as a photographer, I've done a lot of photography commissions abroad too, documenting people, cultures, and as a poet as well. Yeah. I write poetry, I perform, and I merge them in somehow all together.
Yeah.
So it's very varied. We haven't got enough time to get into everything.
But I like that you're bringing in all your different areas of expertise and passions to help you do your job, basically.
Yeah. Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
So you just said made the move from TV. Why did you decide to kind of put that in your rearview mirror?
I mean, I guess at the time I was in TV, this is what, maybe back in 2014, it didn't necessarily fill me with a lot of, I don't know, there wasn't enough of imagination in there for me to feel like I wanted to stay there.
Yeah.
You know, TV has evolved since then, so I'm looking at it now with a different eye, but back then it wasn't really for me, who was very imaginative. I had a lot more energy than what TV allowed for back then. So
yeah, you had a bit more hunger, and it
definitely.
wasn't sating it really.
It wasn't.
So let's talk about your style of filming. What is your style of filming? The Jolade Olusanya stamp. How do you put your mark on videos and films?
I guess because I'm a photographer, I'm a self-taught photographer, and I guess that heavily influenced my film. I would say I'm a very fly on the wall type of shooter.
Yeah.
I like to document things as they are, unrehearsed if I can. You know, a bit of movement here and there. I'm not a fan of keeping things static for no reason. So I would say fly on the wall is my style of shooting, whether it's photography or film. Definitely.
Yeah. So, and ultimately you need a bit of kit that's going to be able to complement that style of shooting.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And how would you say that the EOS C70 has done that for you?
I mean, where do I start with the EOS C70? It was definitely a surprise of a camera to look at. It was tiny, and I say tiny in the sense that I didn't expect a cine camera to look that small. It was like I was holding a DSLR in my hands again. You know, I'm currently using my 6D to do this interview, right? And it feels like I'm holding the same thing when I'm holding the EOS C70. So it was knowing that that camera could allow me to be very mobile and versatile in terms of the different angles I need to shoot from, especially because my work as a documentary maker has seen me be a solo shooter a lot. So this camera fit right in with that experience that I've, you know, gained over the years.
Yeah, and I guess it's so important, especially now when you probably are doing a lot more shoots alone just because of the circumstances. You need a bit of kit that's going to be able to, you know, do the job that you need to do without having to worry about extra things. And so your mind is focused on the shoot. Most
definitely. It's probably the most unrigged camera I've used in my life. I didn't really have to have much to add to the camera because everything was inbuilt, you know, which we'll get into the details of that. But the camera, you know, again, was very versatile and convenient for what we had in mind for this film that we made. So I'm very happy with it.
Happy. Well, I just want to touch briefly on, you said you're a poet, you've got parkour credentials. How has this kind of aided your storytelling and your camera skills?
So yeah, I don't train as much as I used to, but I've been an athlete for 10 years. I used to be a coach as well for a team called Parkour Generations. And basically because I have this experience in film, when it comes to filming parkour, I just have more experience, I guess, or more of an advantage than people who don't necessarily, you know, have an insight into the sport. So when we were thinking of how to help this idea come to life even more, which again, we'll go into more detail about how it came about, it just made sense. And obviously Georgia, who features in the film, she's an incredible athlete. I've known her for years and it just made sense. So when I was filming her, I didn't feel like I was a fish out of water. I already knew what to do. I've trained in that environment before, so it was just easy for me.
It's just natural for you.
Yeah, it was just easy for me.
Whereas for someone who it's not natural for, they probably might look at you and think, oh my gosh, what's she doing?
I mean, the whole team was pretty much like, don't fall. And I'm like, how can I? You know, we're not the same, but hey, it's all good.
Yeah. So let's talk specifically about the production that you did with Sophia and Georgia. You know, you used the EOS C70, you know, the first production to use this camera. So that's a pretty, you know, a nice little badge of honor to have there. And you filmed a poet's story. So can you tell us a bit more about that production and the story behind it?
Yeah, so my team, Ronan Cole, Charles and I, who run that team, he came to me last year, said, yo, let's film something. And I said, what? He goes, let's work with Sophia. You're the ideas man, come up with an idea.
Yeah.
I said, all right, fine. And basically we wanted to do an idea based on her book called Give This Heart a Pen, but turn that into a visual metaphor. So it wasn't necessarily about the book, it was going to be about her, but using that title to create a sort of story. So the idea was we would, you know, travel around with Sophia, documenting her and her process and make this a film, right? But quarantine hit and then the idea got shelved for a while. And then Canon, you know, got in touch and said, hey, you got any ideas? And I was really quite, you know, suspicious, like, really? Me? I don't, you know, I'm really not out there to be approached. And they loved the idea, which really surprised me. And they said, go as far as you want in terms of the idea's remit. And so we fleshed it out, Charles and and I presented it, and they said, cool, we can get it done. So the idea was that basically we would document Sophia in different locations, starting with the studio where she would be going through her notes.
Yeah.
And if you watch the film, you see all these different backdrops. And what we wanted to do was make it clear that when you are a writer, you go to different places in your head to take in life, to document what it is you're writing.
Yeah.
Those backdrops represented that space in a writer's mind, even if you are out there in the woods or whatever. And we wanted to make that, flow through the film. But most importantly, we didn't want it to be a poetry video. Me being a poet, I'm very passionate about the craft, and I wanted to find a way to turn the visuals, make the visuals more poetic, and then let her voiceover be the documentary side of things. So rather than her performing a poem, because anyone can do that, but I wanted to bring a different perspective to poetry in film.
Yeah.
That's why there's parkour in it as well, all the locations, the set design, all these elements. So yeah, that was the idea that we came up with, and then Canon said, yeah, we love it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and yeah, we did it.
And what were some of the challenges you faced while doing the shoot?
I guess the first challenge was the quarantine. We had a few more ambitious ideas that we couldn't do because of the quarantine, but we still found ways around them to do other things. So the challenges was, getting around, finding a camera that could be versatile enough to get the shots we wanted without having to rig so much. Because again, quarantine, you can't have a whole crew with you, right? So you need a camera that could do a lot more. We also knew we were not necessarily people that had the most time. Again, we had different schedules and stuff. And also knowing that Sophia is a very busy woman. So we had to lock her down. Georgia as well, very busy woman too.
Yeah.
So finding ways to get people and equipment together that would help us get this thing done in record time, but also done to a quality that we could all be proud of, because this is, original content. This is our idea. We wanted it to be done the way we wanted it to be done, not because it needs to be viral or anything.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we were just about the feeling. So having a camera that allowed us to bring the feeling out of what we're trying to make was very important. And a team as well, I would say.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things about this camera is that it's armed with so many features that enable people like you to go out there alone. And, you want to tell this story, and you don't want this intrusive piece of kit, really. You want the camera to be able, you want the screen to be able to turn, you want to have quick access to buttons, the touch interface and things like that.
Exactly.
Talk to me about the kind of the layout of the camera. How useful did you find the kind of the usability of it?
So I think the first thing I mentioned earlier how the camera reminded me of a DSLR. So it's like a cross between a 1DX and like a C100 in terms of the build and layout and the buttons all around, which I found really useful. So my hands don't have to travel so far around the body to find what I need. The first thing I noticed was the fact that it had inbuilt ND filters. I was like, great. That means I don't have to screw on lens filters on top of my lens and take them off every time I'm changing, which is great. It had autofocus capabilities as well, which I was really interested to see what they could do alongside the RF lens range, which I hadn't used before. So I'm new to the RF lens range and the EOS C70. So being able to, play with these new toys allowed me to really do a lot more than what my storyboard actually had in mind as well. So knowing that it was light, I forgot I was, holding it at some point. I was walking around with it. Aaron can testify for sure. Knowing that also it had the low light capabilities of the camera, gave me a lot of relief. I'm not a fan of using a lot of artificial light. I'm a huge fan of natural light. And knowing that the camera didn't need much to assist the visual quality. And that meant that going into post, I didn't have to worry about noise or an inconsistent workflow because I was changing, color profiles every so often. It was quite consistent. But I think the one thing I liked was knowing that I could actually use import LUTs to the camera. So we were filming in C-Log 2, but knowing that we could actually watch it while film with the Rec 709 LUT over it was amazing. So it meant that I didn't have to worry about, is this going to work in post or anything else? It's just going to work. But I think the star of it for me was the autofocus capabilities, the follow focus capabilities. So it's quite intuitive. You can literally touch a point on the screen and the lens will focus to it. Or you can actually get it to do its thing. It's got facial recognition. So Sophia could turn away from the lens and turn back, and it would track her face.
Yeah.
If she was moving across, it would track her as well. So I didn't have to touch the lens too much at all when I was filming, which again, less of an issue if you're a solo shooter, which I pretty much was for this shoot. Man, there's actually quite a lot I could go into. You have to ask me specific questions.
So what I'm gathering from you is that, you went into this shoot with an idea, with a story to tell, but using this kit enabled you to maybe just push the boundaries of creativity a little bit, be it the RF lenses, be it, the usability, the ND filters, all these different things that are enabling you to do your job in a much more efficient and, the better quality, in a much more efficient way. Yeah,
definitely. There was even a shot when we were shooting with Georgia. I think we had just about wrapped, but I was standing on the wall and Sophia was around. And where she was pretty much stood gave me an idea for a different shot that wasn't, on the list. And I was able to literally get right down into it and shoot it without needing to change much. I was just ready, Again, because of the inbuilt ND filters, knowing that I could get to 120 frames per second by swiping across the screen, the touchscreen capabilities as well. I didn't have to do much to even think on the spot. It was just a very convenient camera. And again, it being a cine camera, it didn't make sense to me because I was like, can cine cameras be this easy or light or fully functional? And I'm a huge fan of Canon, especially because of the color science. So for me, it was a win-win on many levels.
Yeah, so it's opened your eyes a little. It's blown your mind, I feel, a little bit. You weren't expecting some of these features to be there, and they've
honestly
come out of left field.
Honestly, I actually, I've told them earlier, I want one. I'm looking at my 6D like he might have to take the back seat for a minute because I want this camera. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I want this camera too. So can you tell us a bit about filming after lockdown and how that's changed for you?
I miss having people around to shoot with, for sure. The lockdown has definitely taken let's be honest, a lot of our work has suffered as a result. So if you're working in a team, you probably lost a lot of your team because of the restrictions. So now looking forward, I see a lot of filmmakers, and even if you work in entertainment or corporate, everyone's trying to downscale things. So you have to be more versatile in your skill set than you were before, which isn't necessarily fair to everyone if you're specialized in a certain area. But it's the way the world is right now. So as much as I'm mostly a director now, I used to DP a lot more in the past. I'm now being more of a DP for shoots because I just have to. And this camera is useful for that. So it's not a bad thing, but it's a thing that makes you understand that the world is changing alongside technology. And in a way, the C70 came at a fortuitous moment because a camera like this does alleviate a lot of production fears, even if it doesn't necessarily mean the best for everyone that works in the nuanced parts of a production.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting what you say, the point you make about having to adapt, technologically, but just because it's a sign of the times, really, isn't it? So having a camera that's great for camera operators who are like, increasingly having to operate as a one-man band is pretty important right now.
Yeah, definitely. Even on the shoot, just seeing what I could get done mostly by myself, even though I had a bit of assistance, was still quite remarkable. And if not for what this camera could do, the shoot might have taken a bit longer. Actually, no, it would have taken a lot longer because we did a lot. We did a lot in the time that we shot this. So it would have taken a lot longer than the days we spent doing this, for sure.
So are there any other features that really surprise you or that you don't usually use? Maybe like the slow-mo at 120 FPS.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you're
That's a good point, actually. So I'm not the biggest fan of slow-mo. I see it overused and overdone. So when I was told it had 120 frames per second capabilities, I was not sure what I'd use that for until I brought in the parkour element.
Yeah.
And even then, I mostly shoot in 30 frames and slow it down to 24 for the subtle slow-mo. I have my own, I have my own little quirks around that. Seeing that the camera could film in 120 frames, and you could actually the ramping up, options in post were seamless. It wasn't a pain. No frames dropped kind of thing. But also knowing that the audio can get recorded too, but that's recorded in real time. So it's nice to know you can, for example, if you're recording rain, in slow-mo. You can get that sound, waves, whatever it is, you can do that. Knowing as well that these things are literally available at the touch of a small square on the screen.
Yeah.
You know, the touchscreen element was a huge relief, because I'm not the big fan of menu systems, and other brand cameras don't really have great menu systems. So knowing that I haven't got to go all the way into the menu to find certain things, just literally right there on the same screen I'm watching footage through. It's useful. It saves time. It just saves time. I'm a huge fan of saving
definitely.
time. You know,
I think that's one of the biggest criticisms that a lot of people have who are using cameras. It's a usability interface button layout, and sometimes it's so convoluted, or things are positioned in an unnecessary place. It really does mess with your workflow. So I cannot hammer home enough how important it is that this camera has really been well thought out, and the button layout, the menu, the usability, the interface has all been there to ultimately complement you and in your work.
Definitely. Again, if you're a one-man team, sounds like I'm selling the camera, but it's speaking from experience. Like it really
it's just your experience.
It really is a one-man team camera. The flip screen as well is a great addition. Again, awkward angles. Knowing that it's also it can film vertically as well. So I found that really surprising, to be honest. Because I was curious as to what Canon's aim was with that. But then looking at shoots I've done in the past, from abroad, and I wanted to film something for my timeline, and I have to always turn my camera around and flip the sequence and everything. But this films the clips in the vertical format at the same resolution as your full res media. So there's a link. It's connected all the way through. And you can actually look forward to editing that more than you usually would if it was like off your phone or something. The powerful system just works. And the codec as well, the codec you film in too. All these things are timeline friendly. I've got a rig, I've got a PC Tower rig that I've built up to handle 4K media, and there wasn't a single bit of lag when I put it straight through my system. I didn't need to make proxies, even though the C70 can make proxies. So it's got a dual SD card slot feature. You can record full res in one, proxy in the other, but also it's got a redundancy feature for recordings if you're worried. It's got a backup kind of solution. You need that. You think you recorded it, you get home like, okay. Exactly. So and the fact you can use SD cards, so you haven't got to break the bank. Obviously you get a higher quality SD card than usual, but you haven't got to break the bank compared to the other ranges of cards that are out there. So if you're someone that comes from a 5D Mark, the 5D Mark II, the 6D range, for example, you can still carry on moving forward. Even that being said as well, the lenses. So again, RF lens is great. Huge fan. Fast lenses, they look great. Knowing you can program a ring on them as well. If you want to program it to change ISO, that's amazing. Okay. Definitely. It already sounds sweet. But also knowing that you can use EF lenses thanks to the 0.71 adapter. It's gonna save a lot of independent shooters stress, because things cost money, right? And I use a lot of primes from the EF range, and they're great pieces of glass. Knowing that I can still use those moving forward, if I want to, is great.
I think it's so good to be. It's good to have that choice. That's the word right there, isn't it?
I think it's good. It's good that Canon are giving us choice with this camera. It's not about abandoning everything, and it's about you can still move forward with the old and new at once. And if you wanted to, I would still get an RF lens because they're just a lot faster, especially that 70 to 200. My goodness, but
it's good to know you've got the option.
Yep, definitely. Definitely.
Wicked. So let's just go back to the vertical shooting. How exactly did the camera help? The camera help vertical shooting for you? So
I didn't use it much for the project because everything was filmed, in a 16:9 ratio. But again, thinking about people, if I'm thinking of shoots that I've got coming up, in the future, and ones I've done in the past, where I know that could be useful. I like sometimes filming, artsy BTS pieces that look like movie videos on my Instagram. I've done that a few times in the past. I want to be able to do that moving forward. Again, without having to put my camera down and pick up a phone. It's press of a button and I can just turn it over and it's ready to shoot.
Seamlessly.
It's more efficient. It's more efficient.
And
it's more friendly.
And do you see this as something that's like rising in demand?
I see it being used a lot around the more artsy filmmakers, and because they've made a scene camera that is more or less affordable, right? So I see a lot of people who again want to enter the scene side of things, going for this camera, knowing that again, if you've got studio shoots, you've got music, whatever. Especially if you're working in music promos, this is something you're gonna want to use. You know, if you're working in fashion, you're gonna want to use this too.
Yeah,
if you're doing photography, and you want to get a BTS of what is you're shooting, whatever it is, this camera can be used for these things. And even if you're working on more corporate things, if I don't know, depending on what they want for their social media channels, again, you haven't got to think of a whole new strand for these things. The camera can just do that. You haven't got to change your setup. It's all just ready for you. You know?
I think it's a great example of Canon just reacting to the times, isn't it? And the demands of what people need and what they need to get out of their footage and what they need out of a bit of hardware.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. And you know, if I haven't said it before, I'm not the biggest editor, you know, or the fan of editing, but again, knowing that someone that doesn't like editing like myself but can edit, it's a seamless transition from camera to timeline to export, even to grading.
Just on point. Jolade, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I'm now going to turn to Aaron. We've got a few questions from the audience, and we've got some more questions for you as well. But Aaron, how are you?
I'm good, Lucy. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you. Good to have you on the live Q&A.
Thank you very much. It's an exciting time.
It is. Oh, you've got it there. Right, so I'm going to dive straight in with a question for you, Aaron. Can you tell us how the EOS C70 fits into Canon's Cinema EOS lineup?
Sure. So this camera doesn't replace any camera on our current lineup. It sits between the C100 Mark II and our C200. However, on its own, it's actually a very unique product. It's compact, it's lightweight, it's like a mirrorless or DSLR camera, but it's got all of the professional interface you would expect from a cinema camera. So it kind of bridges the gap between mirrorless and DSLRs with Cinema EOS to create a whole new concept that I think a lot of people are going to be very excited about.
Yeah, definitely. So we're talking about a camera with like cinema quality, but with the versatility of a much smaller, compact body, and a compact camera packed with features that just basically support such a wide range of shooting scenarios, which, you know, Jolade covered as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's just a lot this thing can do. So why have you decided then to use an RF mount on the camera, and what are the benefits of it for filmmakers like Jolade?
There are so many benefits to the RF mount system. Some of the main ones would be the increased optical performance. They're sharper, they're lighter. They've got faster autofocus with our dual pixel autofocus, and the image stabilization is also much more effective. However, the real beauty behind the RF mount is that it's still compatible with our extensive collection of EF lenses.
Yeah.
So we're going into the future with cutting edge technology, but at the same time, we're not leaving any lenses behind. Just like Jolade said, there's loads of beautiful EF lenses out there. We've actually produced almost 150 million of them, and we're not stopping the support, but we're also bringing these amazing, lightweight, fast, sharp lenses into the industry.
Yeah. I think the good thing about this move as well is that it puts a stop to any disgruntled photographers and videographers who have invested quite a lot of money. As Jolade said, this stuff costs money. It's not cheap. So I think, you know, the cost compatibility is going to be quite remarkable for a lot of people.
Yes, and also for filmmakers, there's some very fine features with RF lenses, such as high resolution iris control. So with EF lenses, we could control the iris with 1/3 of a stop, but now we can control it with 1/8. That means we can now control the iris almost like it's a manual lens, and it will be beautifully smooth, going from a dark environment to a bright environment, and still get professional results. We've also got a customizable lens ring now that you can use to control the ISO, the iris, or the white balance. And that's just such a natural way to change the exposure, change a setting on the camera. And there's so much versatility as well, such as using the buttons, the touchscreen, or now the new lens ring. It's just so exciting to see filmmakers like Jolade have these tools in their hands and just see how they use them and how they respond.
I think it's really important, isn't it, that one of the things I love about Canon is Canon takes a lot of feedback from, you know, your ambassadors, DOPs, and people that you work with, and you do genuinely take their thoughts and changes and things they want done differently on board. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of this camera. The fact that you can personalize so many elements of this camera is really, really impressive.
Yeah. So we're not even saying that you have to use the buttons. It's a choice. You can use the touchscreen. We've created a whole new user interface for that because we understand that the trends are going towards using touchscreens more, not only to view the image, but so that your eye doesn't go away from it. You can control things too. So we're always looking at the market, how it's changing. And this camera being a new camera in our lineup and not replacing anything, I think it really does speak volumes in that regard.
Yeah. So let's talk about optical image stabilization for a minute. It's baked into the camera. When you team it with the lenses, though, we're talking a real high level of image stabilization. So can you just talk to us a little bit about that?
So as I mentioned, the RF lenses have great optical image stabilization. It's significantly improved over EF. I remember Jolade said this quite a few times when he was filming, because a lot of his film was shot handheld. And he thought, I think a lot of people were going to think this was shot on a gimbal. He couldn't believe how smooth it was looking. So not only is the optical side great, but we've got in-body 5-axis electronic image stabilization in this camera as well. The same one that's featured in our C300 Mark III and the C500 Mark II. However, this camera takes it further by incorporating the RF mount and also offering a new Super 16 digital IS mode, which means in Super 16 shooting in 2K resolution, you can get even more powerful image stabilization. And as you mentioned, because we are in the fortunate position to produce both the camera and the lenses, we don't just make them compatible, they can talk to each other. So with image stabilization, those 5 axes of movement, 2 axes are controlled on the optical side, and then the remaining 3 in the body. And that brings the best of both worlds together to create a level of image stabilization that wasn't possible by just using one or the other. But it's a whole new level.
Well, I think the fact that, some people are looking at Jolade's footage and thinking, oh, this has been shot with a gimbal or some kind of assistance, that says a lot about the level of image stabilization that we're working with here.
Yeah.
That's quite impressive. Testament to your filming skills and a testament to the camera, basically. Jolade, I've got a question for you. Can you tell us why having a range of lens options for one camera is beneficial? And if you can, try and pull in a few real life examples.
I mean, having a range does make sense. You rarely ever shoot anything on one lens unless you're using like the old cameras, with fixed lenses. So I know my favorite lens was the 15-35 RF lens. It's wide enough and versatile enough for me to get a lot of what I had in mind done. I mean, again, huge fan of primes, mostly 35mm, but then the 15 gave me a bit more range. 15-35 gave me more range. We used the 85, the 70-200 RF2. We used a cine lens as well, which I was a huge fan of. I've never used a Canon cine lens before. And Aaron can attest, my eyes lit up like a baby's, like seeing candy. It's like, really? I wish we had the whole, cine range, but I used a 24 a little bit as well, knowing that, again, I could use that on that smaller camera, thanks to the 0.71 times adapter, which was amazing. It narrowed the playing field a bit, but again, opened up those more possibilities. So if you're on a small crew type budget, you got a nice camera, you can still afford to get you some lenses without having to get a bigger camera that might take more time to rig. And again, for me, I didn't feel like I was holding a cine camera. So having more lenses just makes sense. And I think, I don't want to waffle on too much about that point, but it just makes more sense.
So what is the most important thing for you about lenses?
Knowing that the lenses are light, durable, depending on the conditions you're shooting in, especially if you're working in documentary, you want to be sure the lens can be rugged enough. Knowing but that they're fast enough as well. So for a variety of scenarios, from bright exposures to low light, if you're someone that's again traveling, you're working in for example, if you're working in like a village somewhere in Africa, I've been in situations like that where the only light source you've got is a campfire. You want a lens that can still work with those sort of conditions. So light, fast, and rugged, or durable.
And did you use the third ring on the RF lens?
I didn't.
No?
Unfortunately for me, I found out about that a bit too late, and by then we're pretty much done. But
Yeah.
it excited me again, knowing that wait, you can program a lens ring. Like,
Yeah.
who thinks of these things?
So
So
your time will come to have a play of that.
I'm patiently waiting. I'm patiently waiting.
I feel like, you know, what you're just talking about, you know, being able to do so much with one camera and not to bring so much. Not only can you now go to work with a really light kit bag, essentially. I think what this reminds me of is, you know, the transition of DJs. You know, back in the day, DJs used to carry around real heavy records.
Whole decks and everything. Yeah.
You know, everything. And now it's just like, boop, it's on a USB stick. And I feel that, you know, camera technology is kind of doing a very similar thing, that you guys can arm yourself with such extensive technology without the backache.
Yeah, key point, without the backache. You know, it's I could definitely say that for sure.
Or the arm ache, all the aches that you get.
All of it. Yeah. Honestly.
Aaron, I just want to talk a bit about the mount adapter. We've obviously touched on it, but can you just tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. So today we announced our 0.71 times mount adapter. And what it does is it not only allows you to use our extensive range of EF lenses on the C70, but it also allows you to maintain full frame angle of view with those lenses. Even though this camera has a super 35mm sensor, which is really special, especially for some filmmakers who may come from shooting on full frame on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, and they already have a set of EF lenses they're used to, and they're used to the look that they provide. They can easily transition to this camera with those lenses. And it also provides an additional stop of light transmission. So it effectively changes a f2.8 lens to an f2 or an f4 to an f2.8. So that's such a massive benefit when you're shooting in low light. So this camera has a 4K DGO sensor, which is already so sensitive and great in low light performance. But adding that mount adapter to it as well is a whole nother ball game. It's phenomenal.
Like the perfect partnership, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I think low light recording is so important. It's such a bugbear of so many people when they don't get the footage or the content that they need because the kit can't keep up. So it's great that that there's so many features that are making sure that cinematographers can tick that off their list basically and have one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And with Jolade, he was shooting in London in some really dark environments, and he wasn't using the light. He was just using the street lights. And there's something really beautiful about the camera capturing the essence that you can see with your eyes. Yeah. And that's something that wasn't possible, 5 years ago. You'd be adding noise to the image, and now we're seeing it as we can. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, well, you make a valid point. 5 years ago, Jolade, what was your shooting experiences like 5 years ago? The kind of kit you were using, the stress you faced, some of the more positive things to come out of it, and how has that changed between then and now?
I'm thinking to 5 years ago, and let alone kit, my experience wasn't half as good as it is now. So I'm scratching my neck in nervousness just thinking about it. But I mean, again, my trusty 6D is where I shot a lot of my early stuff on. I would never say it's usually down to the camera alone. It's also about the skill as well. So with any tool you can make anything happen. But again, it's nice to know tools can make the process easier. I saw in the comments someone spoke about the camera being light. Can it be used with a drone? That's another bonus point. Some of the footage we shot was actually on a huge drone, but the camera is so light, I felt like it was almost overkill. To a certain degree. I was able to put this on a Ronin S. I wasn't sure it would actually work, and it did. Knowing that, again, this camera is that versatile that you can add it to your production workflow. It can go on pretty much any rig. I say any with an asterisk, because maybe there's some rigs you might not be able to go with, but almost any rig you realistically seeing yourself working with. We even used it on a C-stand as a crane, to get some of the shots too. So it's a very versatile camera that my 60 couldn't do the same thing 5 years ago. You have to get a magic arm, a clamp, and all these other things. And this camera's got 2 shoe mounts, on it that allow you to be more versatile with how you rig it. So, my 60 ain't got 2 shoe mounts. It doesn't have that. So, 5 years ago, we've moved really fast, to say the least. So I can't even look that far back anymore. I really can't.
I think it's an interesting point you make is about drone photography. Drone photography and videography is something that's taken off so much at the minute. So the fact that you can put this high quality camera, strap it to a drone and get some footage. And because it's so lightweight, it means the battery is going to last a lot longer on the drone as well.
Yeah,
For one, I can't wait to see some drone footage with the C70 actually. That's my thing. I love drones.
You're gonna love what we did here. You're gonna love what we did.
I'm gonna check it out. So Jolade, you mentioned the smart autofocus. So can you just talk to us a little bit how it works and how you found it?
So the smart autofocus, how do I put this? So essentially there are two sides to it. Aaron, please feel free to jump in if I misquote some details. One of the first things was knowing that I could do focus pulls without touching the lens. I like, good focus pulls. So there's a scene in the film when you do see it where I focus pull between Sophia and a wall. There's a reason why, but I was able to just do that by touching the actual viewfinder. Touch the wall on the screen, then her on the screen, and it just does that naturally. But knowing that you can actually tell the camera how fast you want it to pull focus is also amazing. I don't know a camera that can do that. If you're a focus puller, obviously you're really good at your job and you're timing everything, But with the camera, you're just touching a point and it's taking, between 1 to 5 seconds, or maybe even more, maybe 5 seconds max, but for that focus pull. And then also knowing again that if you are tracking a pen across a shot, it can do that too. It can track the focus of the thing you asked it to focus on. There's a box that is the remit for the focus. You can move it there and it locks onto that thing or face or whatever.
So would you say that's one of your favorite features of the camera?
I like it. Again, for me, I mean, I like doing manual focus pulls. I'm a huge fan of manual focus pulls. I don't like everything being sharp all the time. So this camera, made me think outside the box in terms of how I view focus. And again, it made it easier for me to focus without having to ask anyone else, is that really in focus or not? But also the focus peaking on the camera too. I've not seen that mechanism before, where it's got like some arrows that let you know when it's in or out, rather than using your eye or some sort of zebra peaking to find out, or color peaking. It's more intuitive. It just helps more than any other system I've used before.
Wow, that's saying something. And what format did you record in?
Oh, we recorded in, was it you have to have it here, XAVC. Yeah, XFAVC. Yeah, so that's what we recorded in. I mostly shot in 30 frames per second in C-Log 2. That's why I recorded in most. And then we did C-Log 3 when we had to do 120 frames long up because we had to switch it over as well.
And Aaron, what other recording formats are available?
So the camera can shoot in XFAVC up to 410 megabits a second, and that's in 422 10-bit. But you also have the option of HEVC MP4, which is at 225 megabits a second, also in 422 10-bit or 420 10-bit. And finally, we also have H.264 in 420 8-bit, and that's at 150 megabits a second. There's a lot of numbers there.
A lot of numbers. Yeah, your brain must have so much going on in a minute. But basically, a versatile range of numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason we have those options is XFAVC is it's robust. We've been using it for many years now. Lots of editing machines like it, and same with the workflows. You can't go wrong with using that format. It's very reliable. But HEVC is also more of a format of the future because it's half the capacity and it's still maintaining a lot of that quality. So we understand that the industry is going in that direction. Maybe more people use XFAVC when they buy the camera today, but in a few years later, that same owner might start using HEVC in the future. And then, H.264 is still 420 8-bit is still a massive codec, especially for corporate work, things like that don't need heavy editing or manipulation in post. So it's free, great formats really, all for their own specific purpose.
Yeah, and I guess it's great for people investing in the camera to know that, like you say, they might be using a particular format one year and then a couple of years later they might change, they evolve the way they shoot. So Jolade mentioned the 120 FPS high frame rate, but is that the fastest it can go?
Nope. So the camera does do 4K 120 frames per second with no crop, and it can record like that for an unlimited duration. but it can also go all the way up to 180 frames per second when in Super 16 mode at native 2K resolution. And once again, that can be recorded for an unlimited duration. It's also worth noting that at 120 frames, you can still use our dual pixel autofocus. And that's really useful. Because a lot of the time, people are shooting slow motion to capture fast-paced, dramatic scenes. But because that object is moving at a fast pace, viewers will start becoming more critical of how sharp and in focus that is. So having dual pixel autofocus helping you with that, as Jolade would know when he was shooting his parkour scenes in the film, is really useful. And for the first time, you can now shoot slow motion and record audio at the same time with this camera, which is really cool.
But we've got a dual slot media recording. Is there anything special about that?
There is, believe it or not.
Of course there is.
So on previous Cinema EOS cameras, you could do double slot recording and relay recording. Double slot is creating backups. Relay is essentially combining the capacity of two cards. But now we've taken it even further with simultaneous recording. So now you can alternate the bit depth, the resolution, and the format on each card slot. So for example, I could be shooting 422 10-bit intra-frame on card A, and then long GOP in 2K on card B. And that just gives you that fine-tuning flexibility to get the outputs that you need for your specific workflow. You might know that your editing machine prefers prefers your proxies in a certain format, or maybe if you're on a higher budget production and you need to show people the footage on a tablet or something while you're filming on production dailies, and you know that platform has a specific requirement for resolution and things like that, you can tailor the camera around that now. So it's really cool to just have more control as to how you use it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got another question for you. There's no option to record RAW.
No.
Why?
Well, why do you want to record in RAW? So actually, as I mentioned, we've got XFAVC, which is a really beautiful balance of quality and a reasonable file size. It still has the 16 stops of dynamic range, and it gives you all of that room to manipulate the image in post to your liking, without having to worry about the file size. When you shoot in RAW, you're actually making multiple decisions. So you're accepting that the file size will be more than twice what it would be in XFAVC. So you will have to consider the size of your SD cards, or even on your editing machine, the capacity for that as well. But then you need to invest more time in sharpening the image, applying noise reduction to the image. These are all things that the camera does for you when you shoot in a regular format. So this is an entry-level Cinema EOS camera. So we expect people, upcoming filmmakers, entry-level filmmakers, to want to shoot in XFAVC. It's the perfect balance. And RAW is something that's available in more higher-end cameras, and we think it's more suitable for high budget productions. XFAVC is great for most people.
So let's got one last technical question for you, Aaron. Let's get technical about the DGO sensor. Can you just give us an overview of how that works?
So this camera has the same 4K Super 35mm sensor, which has dual gain output as the C300 Mark III, which is a really highly regarded camera. And what dual gain output is it's this technology that works at the sensor level, and way before any image processing takes place. And it creates up to 16 stops of dynamic range. And it does this by reading the image at two different amplifications, a lower amplification and a higher amplification. The lower amplification is ensuring that the image is clean and that there's low noise, and it also retains information in the highlights. Whereas the higher amplification is retaining information in the shadows to ensure that they don't clip. Then the sensor combines those two images together, gives you all of that latitude for which you can manipulate in post, but you can also record straight into HDR formats such as PQ or HLG and get exceptional image quality straight out of the box.
So we're talking, true to life colors, cinematic colors, natural, everything just looks as it should.
Absolutely. And watch Jolade's film.
I'm definitely going to be doing that.
Absolutely beautiful. And that's all because of the DGO.
Yeah.
And Jolade.
And Jolade, I have a final question for you, although a software announcement has just covered the question that the audience members asked. So bear with me. Any plan for this camera for future projects?
Yeah, as soon as Canon gives me one. But essentially,
hint, hint.
I do have a lot of, like I said, I'm not sure if I said it earlier, but I'm trying to move more into film. That's been my main love. I love documentary and I always get to do this, which is great, but film is my main thing. So there's a lot of poetry films I want to film, short films I want to make. And even though Aaron said this is an entry-level camera, I believe it's perfect for what I'm trying to do. Both my collectives are full of incredible people that want to do stuff, and this camera can help us. Well, mostly me, but help us to do stuff for real. So yeah, I've got plans.
Yeah. So watch this space, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And on that note, that brings us to the end of our live Q&A. Thanks, guys. Jolade, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time to share your brilliant experiences, and of course, Aaron, your extensive knowledge on what this camera can do. Just want to apologize to anyone who didn't get their questions read out. We've obviously had a lot to talk about, a lot to go through in only a very short space of time. So apologies if you didn't get your question heard. There was just way too much to talk about. I'd like to thank Jolade again. Such a brilliant insight into his projects and experiences in the industry. And of course, Aaron just lending that extensive knowledge to the session. I've definitely learned a lot. I really hope you guys have. And I just want to say thank you as well to the guys watching. Thank you for tuning in. I really hope you've enjoyed the last hour and feel like you've got some valuable insight, something to take away from this live session about the camera, or maybe some inspirational anecdotes about how you could maybe apply some creativity into your own projects. Now, before I completely shut off this session, I just want to let you know there's a special episode of the Shutter Stories podcast featuring both Aaron and Jolade. We've got lots to talk about. It's a really interesting and fun dive into the technology and Canon's vision, basically. It's a brilliant listen. I definitely advise you go and listen to it. And all that's left to say is thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.